Hi, I'm Sherry and this is Gardening in the North. Have any of you hit that gardening wall? And what I mean by that is you just don't look forward to coming out to your garden. You're tired and you know that anytime you go into the garden, it's going to be a lot of work. And you're just kind of tired of looking at your beautiful plants that have turned yellow and brown and they're done. Like, they've done what they needed to do and they're done. And so now you have to take care of them. You have to, pull them out and decide whether or not you're going to burn them or compost them and, amend that area for next year. And I kind of feel like I've hit that wall where I just kind of don't want to be in this 2020 garden anymore. And I really want to take all of the learnings that I've learned from this garden and put it towards next year's garden. I want to lay out all my seeds and decide which varieties, how many of them I'm going to grow, and where I'm going to put them. And do I have enough space? Do I need to expand? And, all those fun things that you want to do in preparation for the next garden. Because every year you want to make that garden even better than the garden you had. Now, I will say that this garden that I had this year has been my best garden yet. And, I do truly love my garden. I think I'm just at that point now where I'm ready to start a new garden. And unfortunately, I live in Ontario, Canada, and we only have a certain number of days to grow. So I only got one chance at it. So I'm going to start pulling all of my tomatoes off the plants. The temperature's supposed to drop to about 2 tonight, possibly 1 tomorrow, and I have 107 tomato plants, so I really need to get started on pulling every single tomato off those plants. Now, I've tried to leave them on as long as possible because I do know that the flavor is a lot better when you leave them on. However, I don't want to risk losing them due to the low temperatures we're going to have. So I am going to pull all of the green ones off, and I'm going to try and leave some of the stems on them. I feel, from past experience, they've ripened up better when they've had the stems left on them. So I'll probably cut them off as opposed to pulling them like I would if they were ripe. I'm then going to lay them in my dining room across my dining room table, and hopefully within the week they'll start ripening up and I'll get to start processing them. I have roughly 50 pounds of tomatoes in my freezers, my freezers right now. And so I'm looking forward to adding all of these ripe tomatoes, or green and then ripe tomatoes, to that lot so that I can make tomato sauce. So I'm going to start pulling all the tomatoes off. I'm going to start assessing the plants. I'm going to start a burn pile, and then I'm going to burn all of the plants that have any kind of disease. So the tomato plants behind me have a lot of disease on them, and I'm going to make sure that I burn them in the burn pile rather than leaving any part of them in this garden box. And the reason for that is I don't want that disease to stay dormant in the raised bed so that next year when I plant something there, it will attack those seedlings that I plant there. Likewise, when I did my garden tour last week, I mentioned that the tomato plants behind me were not doing very well this year. This has been the worst year for the raised bed boxes for the tomato plants in all of the 3 years that I've been here. And I thought maybe it was the sunflowers that I have growing in this garden this year, but the more I think about it, I think it has a lot to do with crop rotation. I think that I should have moved them. This is the 3rd year that I've used 3 of these boxes in this garden for tomatoes. And I think that I should have moved them to another area. I feel that when you move a particular variety to another area, so you're just rotating your crops, it ensures that your soil is healthy. A lot of plants will take and give different types of nutrients and fertilizer that soil needs. And a lot of people don't have to do crop rotation because they do fall gardens. And I have planted some things in my fall garden, but not enough to use up 2,000 square feet of garden space. The other thing that I'm going to be cleaning up today are my watermelon plants and my pumpkin plants. So I can see right now, just kind of looking around, that some of my squash plants, some of my pumpkin plants, not so much my watermelon plants, but some of the other plants have some white mildewy on the leaves, and so they too will need to go into the burn pile, as opposed to some of my other plants that I would normally just cut at the soil level and let the root system kind of decompose and do its job in the soil. So I started to pull some tomatoes, and I realized that for any new gardeners out there, you might not know what I mean by disease on my tomato plants or mildewy white powder on squash plants. And so I thought that I would walk you around those areas, show you those plants, so that you would know that if you saw that on your plants, what I was talking about. So come with me. Okay, so this is one of my tomato plants, and I just want to show you what some of the leaves look like when a plant is starting to get disease and it's starting to die. Just see the dark marks on it. Leaves are starting to go yellow and turn brown. You can see they're actually extremely sad looking. Here's another one just to show you what some of the leaves look like. And then to show you some of the fall squash plants, the mildew, white powdery substance that's on the leaves. This is an indicator that it also is becoming a bit sickly, and I won't leave any part of those plants actually in that box. So this is a total eclipse squash plant. Now I find it interesting over here, these are pumpkin plants, and you can see that they have a lot of the white mildew on them. But the plant right next to it is very green and lush. There are a couple leaves that are starting to turn with the white mildew, but for the most part, that plant is doing really well, to the point where it's also growing new flowers, producing new flowers for possible new fruit, except that our weather here is changing so drastically fast that there won't be any time for fruit to grow. So one of the things I want to show you is all of my green tomatoes. I'm actually going to be pulling them off the plants, or cutting them off the plants with the vines still on them. And the reason I do this is, in past years, I have found that my experience has been that they ripen up quicker. Okay, so this here, it's not quite ready, but this here is supposed to be toad skin melon. Now I got this in a seed exchange from somebody in the States, and she called it toad skin melon. It's a weird name, right? So I looked it up, and what we call it here in Canada, or so I've been able to figure out, is it's Santa Claus melon. This is amazing melon, and thank you so much for the seed exchange seeds. So this one here, it's still fairly healthy. But the problem is that, you know, with our temperature dropping so drastically in the next day or two, this plant isn't going to grow anything. So while I'm pulling out everything else that is diseased and everything else that has basically done its job and provided us the fruit and veg that we needed it to, I might as well pull out the stuff that isn't going to have time and isn't frost hardy. So this too will come out. Now you'll see here, this is a baby Pam pumpkin. These are awesome for baking with if you want to make pies, or one of the things I used mine for was pumpkin scalloped potatoes. Awesome little pumpkins. This is supposed to be orange, however, because I'm pulling it now, I'll just stick this in my window and it will ripen up within a few days.